And hear you as well. Welcome, Tracy.
Good morning. Well, it's good morning for me.
Yes, it's morning for you. It is, isn't it? It's what, about 9:20, 9:30 for you?
Yep, it's 9:25.
Well, you look good in the morning, Tracy. I have to tell you that. You look absolutely smashing in the morning. But it's great to have you here. I'm really excited to have you here. Thank you for joining us today. Tracy, do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself to start off with?
Oh, sure. Well, thank you for having me again. And this is such an important topic during these unprecedented times. But my name is Tracy Washington. I'm originally from Ohio, Akron, Ohio. I'm in the States, United States.
Yeah.
And I am now located in Atlanta, Georgia. And I'm a leadership engagement consultant, and I go into corporations and we do communication training, developing leaders in terms of their ability to really influence and get people moving and motivated to achieve organizational goals. I also do coaching for professional women of faith. So that's in a nutshell what I do. And this work that I'm doing right now is lead certified grief recovery specialist. I take such heart to this work right here because it's kind of close and near and dear to me, of doing work with helping people get over, not won't say get over, but to manage grief and loss. So that's a work I've been doing for like 15 years. And I kind of, didn't work with it as much in the last maybe 10 years. The last time was when the economy tanked in 2009 here in the United States. And so some of the work, a lot of people don't want to talk about grief and loss. They just don't feel like it's something that's, we don't talk about our personal, problems at work, and we just kind of deal with it in our own way. And so now that we've got a global thing going with this whole pandemic, I think this is the time for me to take advantage of my background and really be able to serve people and help people to navigate through loss. So that's in a nutshell what I do.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, for those of you who don't know, I am with the John Maxwell team. John Maxwell team is the largest leadership training company in the world. We have coming up to 30,000 now, coaches and trainers.
I think it's a little more than that. Yeah, I think it's
right.
Over 30.
Almost every country in the globe. And Tracy is part of that team as well. And our desire is, like she said, just to serve people. So that's why we're here today, Tracy. So Tracy, I know that this work, this grief recovery work you do, has actually taken you to all 50 states of America. So you're very, very widely traveled, at least in America, and to the White House as well. So tell us a little bit about that. How did that come about, and what did you do in the White House?
Well, it was almost 50 states, three states I haven't gone to. Nobody ever invited me to Hawaii. I'm like, invite me to Hawaii. I want to come to Hawaii. So there are 3 states: Alaska, Hawaii, and New Orleans. I think those are
you
the 3.
Oh, okay. You have to do that this year. Once the borders get opened, you have to go.
Right, exactly. So with the White House, so back in 2009, when the job market just tanked, the economy, with housing and real estate, a lot of people were right now, just like now, they were without jobs, they were losing their jobs, real estate foreclosures. So it was just like this horrible economic collapse. And so because of that, at the time, under the previous administration, they were trying to figure out what can we do to help Americans to get back to work and to just to help with the whole mourning and grieving of so much loss. People are losing their jobs, their homes. And so there was a symposium at the White House in a collective group of faith-based leaders and also leaders in the communities, and most of the 50 states were there to talk about what can we do. What can a government do? So they wanted to hear from people like me, people who are on the front lines, if you will, trying to help job seekers. So that opportunity to address the grief and loss portion, the emotional impact of job loss, is what my role was there. And there were many organizations that popped up because of funding from the government in terms of career skills and training, People had been on their job, some of them for 25, 30 years, and suddenly they found themselves without a job. And it's like, well, what do I go do? What do I do?
Yeah.
And so the resume writing and interviewing and career building, and how do you learn new skills after you've been doing the same job? And, the computers have definitely advanced since, the 70s and 80s. So a lot of people found themselves just really having a hard time. So the government at that time was stepping in to help do something about that. And that's when I was summoned, along with some colleagues of mine, to talk about job loss from a perspective of what is the emotional, psychological impact of job loss? What does that do to a person's psyche? And how does it, does it help? Does it hinder? What can we do to help people move forward? So that was an exciting time.
Awesome.
Sad time, but exciting time at the same time.
Well, awesome, because at least you were positioned to be able to serve,
Yes.
That's what we talk about, preparation, isn't it? Because you were prepared beforehand. And that's partly why we're doing the show. We want to help people prepare beforehand so they can, be better positioned to face the new future. Because they say when opportunity arises, it's too late to prepare. So you were prepared. And so when the opportunity arose, you were able to just step in, which is really, really important. Well, I really wanted you to speak to us today about grief and loss, because like you say, it's the loss and the mourning. It's not just in relation to those of us who have lost loved ones, because obviously lots of people have lost their lives. And when you listen to the news, it might come across as just numbers, figures. Spain is 20,000, and America is 50,000, whatever. But every single one of those numbers means something to somebody. That is, with every one person that passes, you can just imagine the number of people affected by that, friends, colleagues, family members, and depending on how old the person was, the extent could even be greater. So we have all that. But then, like you mentioned, we have people who are, mourning the loss of their job, where maybe that was their identity, and they're just kind of lost at the moment and wondering, where do I go from here? Or maybe there are people who are on this program who know people like that. So I just really wanted you to help us really in terms of how people can really come to terms with loss and how they can come out of it better, really.
Well, you said quite a few things there that are common when we talk about grief and loss. Identity. That's what stuck out in my mind the most when you started talking. The identity. People have identified themselves as, this is what I do, and so therefore this is who I am. And that's really incorrect thinking. And that's why it's so hard, and the grief is so hard for people, because it's like, I now don't know who I am, coupled with the fact that I'm worried, I have anxiety about, my livelihood. So the thing that I try to help people see in the beginning is that grief is really not, grief is an emotion. It's not intellectual, it's emotional. And if you know that you are a being, you are a spirit with a soul, you live in a body, you have mind, will, and emotions. And I go deeper into this when I'm working with grievers one-on-one. It's like this: you're an emotional being, you're an intellectual being, but grief is not intellectual, grief is emotional. And when people lose their jobs, if their identity it was tied up in what they do for a living, and that what you do for a living is no longer there, they don't know what to do with that. So there are some conflicting feelings there. Yeah. I'm still alive, I'm still here, but what I did is now gone. So the institute where I was certified, we talk about grief, the definition being grief is the normal and natural reaction to loss. It's the normal and natural reaction to loss. And it's the conflicting feelings caused by the end of or a change in a familiar pattern of behavior. Yeah. So I was used to going to work every day, and now I have no job to go to. So who am I? So the identity is almost, the identity crisis, if you will, is secondary to the normal and natural emotion of grief. It causes us to feel, grief causes us to feel like my identity, who I am, is tied up in this job, but that's not accurate. Who we are physical beings. We're created, to do great things in the world. Just because this one thing is gone then we sometimes put our whole world and wrap our whole world around that. And that causes us an emotional response. And that emotional response is what we call grief. And that is the response to the loss. So the identity portion is where, you know, we have to kind of really work with that, the mindset. And we have to look at grief is about the heart. It's not about the head. And so things people say to us when we're grieving. So let's just say, you know, you lost a loved one. When you lose a loved one, your heart is broken. Your heart is broken. So people, well-meaning people, say things like, oh, at least she's not suffering anymore, or at least she's in a better place. That just wants, that you just want to smack people when they say that to you, because it doesn't help. It doesn't help. It helps intellectually because, you know, yeah, she is in a better place. Maybe she's not suffering anymore. However, my emotional relationship with her didn't stop because she's gone physically. So what do we do with the emotional relationship? So that's what we talk about in grief. We have an emotional relationship to the job that we had. And that job, me and that job are no longer together. So it's almost the same thing as a death. It's like the emotional relationship, my emotional connection to what I did every day, the pattern of behavior is now broken. And I'm stuck with this emotion because the job ended, but my relationship to the job is still there. And that is what I need to deal with. And that's what we deal with in grief recovery. What is the emotional relationship or the emotional impact of this loss, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it does. And that's really helpful. That's really good, because I think it's, you know, I was talking earlier about putting things in perspective. And I think that's really important where you were talking about understanding that there's a difference between the intellectual and the emotional. Now, obviously, we can't ignore the emotional. The emotions are there, and emotions are good things. They're just an indication of what's going on in our lives, you know. So the emotion is a good thing. We don't suppress it. We don't deny it, but we don't also allow it to overcome everything else to the extent that we again become paralyzed. I know it can be difficult. It can be extremely difficult. I mean, I've suffered loss in my life. I lost my dad. I was thinking about it the other day, actually. I'm going to broadcast my age now to the World Wide Web. So I'm 53, and my dad passed away when he was 53 or 56. I can't quite remember. So then it seemed like he was older because of the age I was. But looking at myself now, I'm thinking, wow, this was about his age when he passed. So he wasn't actually an old person when he passed. He was quite young. And also the other thing was he was kind of taken. Let's put it like that. He was taken. He wasn't ill. You know, it was like 1 minute he's here, the next is gone. Nobody in the family had the opportunity to say goodbye. It was just like that. He was taken from us. So it was really, really difficult. I mean, one thing that we did to help, and I'm going to ask you in a minute, Tracy, actually, if you're watching and you have a question, if you have a question for Tracy, feel free to put in the comments. I'm sure Tracy won't mind. She'll be very happy to answer your questions. But one thing we did that I know helped us was we deliberately talked about him in the present tense, as if he was still with us. And we will talk about things he used to do, things he used to do that made us laugh, how funny he was, you know, just talk about him. It was difficult because talking about him and knowing he wasn't there was difficult. However, I think we just deliberately wanted to keep the memory of him, not just keep it alive, but not necessarily associate it with pain. Because yeah, we didn't want to have to, when we think about him, think pain. So we deliberately just wanted to talk about him. You know, we're 8 in my family. We're 8 in my family. So when one person is down, they had the other person to just help them. But that was one thing we really did in the early stages that really helped us. We talked about him a lot, the times we had together, even the things he did that was annoying at the time. That was annoying at the time. We talked about it now, and we just laughed over it. And we just, like I said, deliberately did not want to recall those memories and just every time associate it with pain and loss. So that really helps us. But is there any practical things that people can do to help them really come to terms with the emotional aspect of it?
Yeah, well, yeah, there's a lot that you can do. When someone dies, immediately their brain goes into this review mode. You start reviewing the relationship, and it's subconscious. You're not even really conscious of it. You start to review this relationship at some point after a person's death. And depending on the type of relationship you had with the person or the quality of the relationship, we start this review. And there are times when we either enshrine, meaning this person was just so great and they were just so wonderful. And I was just, they were perfect and they never, they never hurt anyone. Or we bedevil them where, oh, that was they weren't any good and, whatever. So we tend to do a review, and sometimes we can get stuck and trapped in this, in this space of not being truthful about what the real relationship was. So what you and your family did is actually quite healthy, to really talk about the good and the bad. I heard you say, and sometimes he was annoying. That's the reality of the relationship. And being truthful is part of the recovery process. Grief recovery is part of the recovery process, and being truthful and honest in how you feel. And what we have done, what we are socialized to do now is, we tell people things like, oh, don't feel bad. And these are learned behaviors when usually from a childhood. Sometimes if you are, crying about something, your parent may say, go to your room. So the idea behind that is, I have to grieve alone. Or here's a cookie. Emotional eating. So we learn to replace certain things trying to help us to get over the grief, and those things are temporary and they don't work. We call those STERBs, STERBS, which stands for short-term energy releasing behavior. So for some of us, it's retail therapy. We like to shop. Alcohol, it could be addictions to drugs, pornography. So a lot of these things are things that people use to try to help them overcome emotions and the emotional impact when they're not really sure what it is. So I think identifying it is a challenge for most people, because they don't know what they're feeling. They just know that they're feeling something. This person is gone. So, and a lot of people said, well, they're gone now, you have to move on. So the intellectual statement there, I have to move on, becomes the truth. And then there's this disconnect and this tension between, well, yeah, I do have to move on. However, what do I do with this feeling, this emotion? That emotion is grief, and nobody really talks about that. So what can you do as an individual when you've lost something? First of all, be truthful and be honest with how you're feeling, because nobody had the same relationship you had with that person or with that job that you had. So be truthful with yourself. Just because somebody else that's sitting next to you in a job loss situation, they may not, be able to stand their boss. They're like, oh, he makes me sick. Well, your relationship with the job and the boss is different than mine. I love my boss. I love coming to work every day. I love being around all my coworkers. So the impact of the job loss or the company shutting down or, us being furloughed or whatever, that has we're different and we're unique. So sometimes what we tend to do is isolate. We will kind of diminish what we're feeling. So the person who loved their job may look at the person who didn't love their job and say, well, I don't want to say anything because she seems like she hated the boss, so I won't say anything because I loved it, but I don't want to be judged. I don't want to be criticized for how I feel, so I won't say anything. So we diminish our feelings, and what we have to really do is come to terms with the truth of what we feel, be honest with ourselves, because we can never we can never manage the grief unless we first of all identify it. Number two, we tell the truth about what we're feeling. Today, I'm feeling some kind of way. And most people can't handle, when you say that you're not doing well today. I think now we're a little bit more relaxed and lenient with each other. We're like, are you doing okay? Now it's become like commonplace for us to say, hey, checking in on you. How are you doing? And it's okay not to be okay.
It's okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's okay not to be okay. And now we're more open to saying that, where before we used to say, oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. How are you doing? I'm fine. But if before this pandemic happened, if you came to me and said, hey, well, how are you doing? And I said, this is not a good day. This happened. I'm feeling really lousy. I feel, that you are thinking, oh my goodness, okay.
Too much information.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting all of that. So it's just like, okay, so what we do is, instead of, and that person unknowingly makes us feel criticized, judged. So we just isolate. We're like, I'm just gonna kind of be to myself because nobody understands how I feel. So that creates this vacuum where we kind of put ourselves in this little space and our little bubble where we're trying to deal with it alone because we don't think people understand. So one of the things with this whole pandemic is that everybody is on the same, the playing field is level. Everybody is experiencing similar situations and we're all grieving something that we no longer have, whether that's lost dreams, hopes, way of life, finances, health, social interaction. We've all lost something.
Yeah.
And we are feeling something behind that. And it's okay to be not to be okay. And it's okay to tell the truth. And the heart wants to communicate. That's why it feels so good to be able to talk to someone. And that person who you're speaking with has to become a really good listener and not try to fix you. Because that's what we do sometimes. We try to fix people. We're trying to figure out what we can do to make that pain or that discomfort go away, either for ourselves or for them. We're like, well, I really don't want to talk about your mom or talk about that. Let's talk about something else. So what we try to do is replace the, loss instead of going through it. Let the person be able to communicate off of their heart, from their heart, get it off of their chest. You've heard that term. Let's get it off I need to just get this off my chest. Well, getting it off your chest is really accurate for my heart wants to communicate my truth. And many times we hold it in. And that's when when you boil you have a tea kettle and you boil water. As the water is boiling, it'll whistle. If you put a cork in that tea kettle, what's going to happen? It's going to implode. The pressure from the steam is going to build up, and pretty soon the tea kettle will implode because it's so much energy inside. And it's, from a human perspective, it's the emotional energy inside, and it has no outlet. I can't tell anybody my truth because they're going to judge me. They're going to think I'm crazy. They're going to think, make remarks about me that are untrue or what have you, or they're going to think something about me. So therefore I won't say anything. And then this is where we start to get symptoms of illnesses. We can get stressed out because that's our imploding from a human perspective, because we don't have anywhere for that emotional energy to go. So part of that release is being able to tell your emotional truth to a trusted person who will listen and not try to fix you, not try to give you advice, not try to tell you what you should do, unless you're asking that, like, hey, what do you think I should do? But we just want to be heard.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Not just that you ask for it, but that they're also in a good position to be able to advise you. I think that's
absolutely,
that's a really important one, because we as human beings, we love to do, I certainly love to do, I love to get active, and we always feel, like you said, we want to fix something. We really want to fix something. But I think for those of you watching and listening, I hope you really take that away, that if you ever find yourself in a position where somebody's offloading on you, not to put yourself under pressure to feel like you have to give them the answer. Sometimes people just want a listening ear. They just want you to nod and empathize with them and just say, I'm here for you, and just be open to listen. So I think that's a real, if somebody can put that in the chat, that would be great. Just really need to remind ourselves of that. Sorry, Tracy, for
no, that's okay. We use the term being a heart with ears. Being a heart with ears. So if you can imagine a Valentine's, the Valentine's heart, and then ears on the side. Be a heart with ears, meaning listen with your heart, not with your head. So when you listen with your heart, that is you getting into the other person's experience and just being where they are and just sitting. In the Jewish tradition, they have something after a death, they call it sitting Shiva, where they just sit with the mourner, the griever just wants to sit. You just sit. If they want to laugh, you laugh. If they want to eat, you eat. Wow. And you just sit and do whatever they do. That is a sign of, I am here for you. I'm just with you. Wherever you want to be is where I am with you. And most of us don't have the capacity to do that because we're in our own heads, we're in our own mind, thinking about how uncomfortable this is for me, or what does this do for me, or this is, how this feels for me. So I'm not really available to be present with you in that sense. But that is really it's it's something mystical about it. And I believe it's just because it's our hearts communicating. When you just sit with a person, just listen and just say, that must be pretty tough, instead of saying, oh, you shouldn't feel that way. Oh, I wouldn't feel that way if I were you. No, no, just be with them and say that, there are language patterns that I teach, things like, that must be really tough for you. Wow, I'm sorry that you're feeling that way. I'm sorry that that happened. Not trying to fix it. And people just say, yeah, I just want to be acknowledged. Every griever wants to be heard, valued, and acknowledged, not changed, not taught, or not judged.
Oh, wow. Wow, awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, Tracy. Now,
Mm-hmm.
guys, if you haven't shared this video already, you're doing someone a disservice. You really are. So you need to share the video. It doesn't matter that they've missed more than half of it. They can watch it on replay, but you're getting value out of it. I really want to encourage you to share it so others can benefit from it as well. And like I said, if you've got any questions, please put it on the chat. I'm going to ask Tracy one final question. Just any last, I have a few questions I'm going to ask you. They're off the cuff for you anyway. I'm going to put you on the spot. But are there any final thoughts that you want to just, leave out there to anybody watching, any words of wisdom, advice, or whatever that just comes from your heart that you want to share?
I think part of this, where we are now, and things that you talked about before we came on, about, what do we do with this time? I think it's important to practice, number one, self-care and soul care. You don't have to do what everybody else is doing.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to, you have to figure out where your place is and be able to process that. And I think you talked about where do you want to be on the other side of this? That doesn't mean to start, because that can cause anxiety too. You're trying to manage the current crisis and conditions and circumstances of your life, but then you want me to think about what's going to happen when this is over. I don't even know when this is over, and I don't know how long it's going to be. I don't know what's going to happen to my present, so it's hard for me to plan. So that just creates more anxiety. So be okay with where you are. I'm a believer. I'm a person of faith, and I'm like, you just have to trust. Just trust that you're going to be cared for. Trust that you are in that you will be here, things will be okay. That doesn't mean you're not going to have to face some difficult decisions or choices, or some things are going to happen, but you're going to be okay. So I tell people to practice mindfulness, meditation, take care of your physical body. I heard you talk about the validation, about what did you call it? Violating your body.
You're
violating your body with certain things. So be able to just take care of your body, sleep, rest, water, food, exercise, all of those things that we know of, but also your soul care. Pay attention and monitor what you're thinking. Turn off the news, because the news is just designed, I heard you say that, the news is designed to feed you all of this thing, which really it just intensifies your fear. Yeah. So find out what you need to know, tune in, stay abreast of what's happening, all of the latest, happenings, and then turn it off, because you can find whatever you're looking for. You're going to find this story of this person, this story. I mean, we got a global thing going on here. So anything you turn on to, you can read a story about it. But you are not designed to handle that level of pressure. So take the pressure off yourself, make the choices that you can, and then what is the next step that you can do, that you can control? I think that you talked about that. Sometimes the uncertainty brings so much, I was like, oh, I'm not clear on what my next step is. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Well, clarity, how about clarity for just the next step? Just the next step. So maybe if you get up in the morning and you're like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do today. How about just getting out of the bed and getting dressed? You can get clear on that. Yeah. You're clear on that. And then just the next step, and learn how to take some of the anxiety and the pressure off yourself. Bills are coming and I don't know how to, well, maybe you can just say, wait, what can I do about this? So monitoring your thoughts and what you can do. And that requires for you to be mindful of what you're thinking about. So think about what you're thinking about. What a person said, I can't remember who it was. Think about what you're thinking about. Think about the things that are crossing your mind, because your mind doesn't, you can control things from running across your mind, and they can either come and go or they can plant. You have to make a decision I just had that thought, and that thought doesn't serve me, because your thoughts are connected with your emotion, which can intensify the grief or the feelings of being alone and all of the other things that are happening as a result of this pandemic. So being able to think about and monitor your thoughts, because that will reduce the anxiety, that will reduce the fears, and practice those mindful things. And then not think that you have to compare yourself with anybody else. Like I said, you don't have to do what everybody else is doing. For a while there, because I follow a lot of people in business and different things that they're doing, and mentors. And for a while, I got a little anxious. I was like, oh my God, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. And I'm like, wait, whoa, hold up, stop. Stop. This is not, you're getting out of your space. So you have to find that place of focus and say, it's okay that I'm being here. Because the fear of missing out is still present in the earth too. Oh, I'm going to miss out on this, even though you're not going anywhere. You're going to miss out on the next class, or the next course, or the next, webinar, or you don't have to do those things. You can be where you are, and you have to trust that what you need will come to you at the time that you need it to come, based on where you are. And not feel like you're always behind, because that's something that I struggle with too. I'm much better at it because I have the tools now, but it's natural for us to feel anxiety. It's natural for us to feel fear. The thing about it is that we don't allow it to control our lives. And so when we recognize it happening, we then can say, oh, I have a tool for that. So grief recovery is like a tool belt. I have a tool belt for that. Tool belt is, first of all, I can be honest and truthful with myself and say, right now I am having fear and anxiety that I'm going to go out and there'll be no meat or no toilet paper. I'm going to, that's real. I may have to go to 15 different stores. That's real. And so we do not, okay, so can you still hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, I got a prompt on my phone, thinks that your speaker is not working.
Well,
okay,
it was a bit shaky, but I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. So, the anxiety and fear are very real. And like I said, be truthful and honest with yourself. And, go inward and check in with yourself. Like, how am I feeling? What am I thinking right now? How can I bring myself back to a center of focus and bring myself back to, who I am? And that's why identity is so important.
Yeah.
Who am I? And, the heart. What is my heart? My heart is anxious because I'm thinking about the worst case scenario. I'm thinking about the what ifs. What we have to do is be comfortable with being uncomfortable, if that makes sense. And I know that's like a really broad, big, bold statement, but we can't do anything about what's happening. That's the uncomfortable part of this. So if we can get comfortable with not knowing and be comfortable with what we do know, what the next step is for us, and being able to just be clear on that, that is a way for us to practice that soul care and self-care and be healthy. So when we do start to make decisions about what our next step needs to be, maybe we're going to go back to school, or we're going to take another class, or because I do believe you should be doing something that will help you to advance, not just sitting down and, curling up under the covers, sucking your thumb like, okay, my life is somewhere scary out there. I don't advocate that. I advocate finding out what your next thing may be, and then figuring that out and sticking with that. And we don't control what happens out here. We just control what happens with us. Yeah. So surrounding yourself with like-minded people who can uplift you and encourage you is very important too, to have a community of people who support you when you're having a bad day. I have friends that I video with, and there are days when it's just like, things are just not happening today. It's just, the energy that it took to put out this fire, this crisis. I got a crisis within a crisis. I got this going on. It took a lot of energy out of me. And, they'll listen. They don't try to fix it. It's like, just breathe. Go get a glass of wine, coffee, tea, whatever. Just breathe. And, maybe just shut your computer down for another hour or two and then come back to it, or just be done for the rest of the day. You have nowhere to be. Just be okay, and be okay with that. And so that's the thing, to be truthful and be honest with how you feel, and acknowledge that, because that grief can overtake you and cause you to identify with it so much that you forget who you really are, you know? So that is, that's kind of in a nutshell what I would say. There's so much to this topic. We could go on for like hours and hours, but I think that's, those are the takeaways I would say for right now, what's immediate that people could do to help themselves in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Tracy. Thank you. I think this idea of controlling the controllables is so important, and not to get too bogged down with the things that we cannot control, because it's when we start to focus on the things that are out of our control that we get anxious, we get angry, we get anxiety. Well, let's focus on the things that we can control. And like you say, for some it's just what's the next step. For some, they can plan to the end of the day. For some, it's they can plan to the end of the week. So wherever you can stretch yourself to, you can do that. But it's just important to keep just keep taking that next step. Just keep taking that next step. Really, really awesome. Right. Thank you all so much for joining us today. I'm going to ask Tracy 7 questions. I just need your answers very, very, very fast before we end. So question number 1, well, I think this might be obvious, but what is your passion?
My passion is living my values and relationships. Relationships are everything. I believe relationships are everything. So I'm big on relationships. So people are my passion. But you said quick. So there we go. People. Okay. So she has me a whole dissertation on that answer.
A whole lesson. Number 2, what's the biggest lesson you've learned to date? So that aha moment for you.
Oh gosh, the biggest. Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh, that's heavy. Whew, so many lessons. I think, ooh, goodness, so many. I think it's okay with finding your own voice. I think is the biggest lesson. Finding your own voice and who you were created to be, and being okay with that. Right. Being okay with being different.
Being okay with who you are. Fantastic. Okay.
Yeah.
The most difficult thing you've ever done.
Ooh, the most difficult thing. I was a single mom, very young. And although it was difficult, it was the best years because it taught me so much about resiliency and being almost putting me in this warrior-like mentality where, you know, I have to defeat this. This is not going to defeat me. So I'd say parenting was probably the most challenging.
Okay.
Yeah.
Most embarrassing moment?
Ooh, most embarrassing moment. I travel a lot. And I was at an airport, very busy airport, and I was trying to run to my gate, and I was like, oh, I have to go and stop by the ladies' room before I go. Well, I just ran in, went to the bathroom. I'm standing at the thing washing my hand, and this guy walks behind me, and I see his reflection in the mirror, and I was just like, what is he doing in here? And he looked at me puzzled, and I grabbed my stuff. And on the way out, I passed like 3 or 4 different guys. I was like, oh, I ran into And I just laughed, and they were like, it's okay. I said, I didn't see anything. And so, I was so embarrassed because there's like all these people at the airport, and I'm thinking, they're probably thinking, what were you doing?
Exactly. That is
like, I'm so sorry. I didn't see the urinals on the wall. I just ran in because I had to use the bathroom so bad. And I just ran in, and that was awesome. And that was at the busiest airport, Atlanta Airport.
Okay, next question. Whose mind would you like to get into and why? Whose mind would you most want to get into and why?
Oh, whose mind would I like to get into the most? I have so many. There's a lady named Janice Howroyd. She is a self-made billionaire. And I've seen her twice. I've met her twice in person, but I would love to be able to sit down and speak with her. She's built a global business, recruiting business, and just a whole global brand. And I would really love to sit and talk with her because the way her mind works, she's an African-American woman, just like I am. Our childhood patterns are different, but just the fact that she's been able to accomplish so much as an African-American woman, I would love to be able to sit down with an hour and talk to her and just hear what she has to talk about and say that, secrets to success that she has, that's been involved with her journey of being a woman of color and a global, global billionaire. Like, wow, that's so hot.
Well, okay, final question. What does success mean to you?
Well, success means to me living my values of being whole in, all areas, health, physical health, financial, community, civic, being able to just I use a wheel of life when I coach people. And I'm like, for me, the values that I bring to each of those sections of life is holistic. And just being able to live out those values in each of those spokes of the wheel, if you will. The living the values. And so I can say at the end of the day that I did well. And I want to hear well done. Like, yeah, I did this.
Great, great, great. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Tracy. Thank you everyone for joining us. We've come to the end of the first episode of Let's Get Future Fit. I hope you will join us next week at the same time, 2 p.m. GMT. Help us spread the word. Invite your friends, invite your neighbors, invite everybody you can think of. Let them join us next week. Next week, I've got Jenny Jones. Like I say, she's an accountant and a happiness coach. You don't want to miss it. Until then, take care, stay safe, and God bless. Bye-bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.